Hello, everyone. I'm Hans Engel from the Directors Guild of Canada. Welcome to our 27th episode of DGC Masterclass via Zoom. Tonight's our second last Masterclass, as we plan on putting this series on hiatus as of next Wednesday, August 5th, to make way for festival season and as the industry, fingers crossed, gets back to work. These are unprecedented times beyond anyone's imagining, which makes me even more grateful that you're joining us for this one. With these masterclasses, we're going behind the scenes and talking to some of the top creatives in the industry in Canada and internationally, covering directors, designers, picture and sound editors, with 2 episodes every week. Well, they have been 2 episodes, there's only 1 left. You'll receive a new invitation with a specific link to tune in for next week, and I'll also be posting the link on my Instagram. So far, we've had Emmy-winning director Jean-Marc Vallée, Emmy-winning editor Kelly Dixon, Oscar-winning designers David and Sandy Wasco, a special event with award-winning groundbreaking filmmaker Jeff Barnaby, 2-time Oscar-nominated doc filmmaker Faraz Fayyad, 2-time Oscar-winning sound editor Karen Baker-Landers, Oscar and Palme d'Or nominee Adam Agoyan, Oscar-nominated designers KK Barrett and Patrice Vermette, maverick filmmaker Bruce McDonald, Oscar-nominated director, writer, producer, and actor Sarah Polley, groundbreaking director Clement Virgo, history-making 2019 Academy Award-winning production designer Hannah Beekler, prolific director and actor Helen Shaver, Oscar-winning legendary Star Wars picture editor Paul Hirsch, award-winning groundbreaking director Mina Shum, renowned director, writer, and actor Casey Lemons, a special edition celebrating the release of Christian Sparks' sophomore film Hammer, world-renowned production designer Claude Perret, Emmy-nominated director, writer, and producer Veena Sood, Emmy-nominated BAFTA-winning director Kari Skoglund, Marvel Cinematic Universe picture editor Jeffrey Ford, groundbreaking award-winning director Michelle Latimer, the first African-American designer in the history of film, renowned Spike Lee collaborator Wynn Thomas, groundbreaking award-winning director Corinne Kusama, and 5-time Emmy-winning supervising sound editor Annalie Blank. All those can be found on the DGC National and DGC Ontario YouTube channels. I'm very pleased to introduce our moderator. Tatiana Maslany is an Emmy award-winning actor and producer known for Orphan Black, Destroyer, Broadway's Network, and is currently starring opposite Matthew Rhys and John Lithgow on HBO's Perry Mason. Tonight's featured guest is award-winning director and producer John Fawcett. John has created an impressive body of work as a producer and director and writer in both feature films and television. He co-created, executive produced, and directed multiple episodes of the Emmy-winning and Golden Globe-nominated sci-fi drama Orphan Black. The series has won countless Directors Guild of Canada and Canadian Screen Awards, as well as a Hugo Award and the prestigious Peabody Award. Fawcett's 4-hour miniseries Bon Voyage won the Nymph Award at the Monte Carlo TV Festival, and he's also directed several pilots and produced various international series, including CBC's The Border and the CBC crime drama The Bridge. Fawcett's feature film Ginger Snaps premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival, garnering an instant international cult following, and is widely recognized as a benchmark film in its genre. He's since produced 2 additional sequels for his successful horror franchise and is currently developing a TV series based on the film with award-winning UK producers Sid Gentle Films. His other feature directing credits include the acclaimed films The Boys Club and The Dark. Recently, Fawcett produced and directed the first original series for the Warner Brothers DC Universe, Titans, and has been a regular director on Amazon's The Man in High Castle. Welcome, John Fawcett and Tatiana Maslany. Come on in.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hey.
Welcome. Great to have you both here.
Thanks for having us.
It's good to be here.
Now, before I turn it over to John and Tatiana, I'd just like to point out to our viewers the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Please type your questions into that little box, and John and Tatiana will see them and try to get to as many of them as possible. They probably won't get to all of them, but they will certainly try. That's it for me. Really looking forward to this conversation. I'll see you at the end. Have a great chat.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hans. Tad,
Great
it's
job.
always
Hi.
lovely to see your face aglow in the sunlight of California.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
backlit, but always in front of a bunch of board games.
Well,
I feel like I've seen you in this, like in performance mode a few times in quarantine.
I do have a board game obsession. That's true.
Yeah.
I put up the family picture here, especially
Yeah.
for you.
Thank you. I
That's you and
appreciate it.
Jordan. I stole that picture from the set.
Yes. That was
And,
that was actually a prop, wasn't it?
It was a prop, yeah.
Yeah.
I stole it.
Okay.
And then I just want to point out
Burned
the Orphan Black nesting dolls up there.
Which were fan art.
Fan art.
What is
You
it
know-
like to have fan art of a show that you've made?
Well, that's a really remarkable experience. You know, like it's
Yeah.
not something that I ever actually thought would ever happen. You know, it seems kind of unbelievable now looking back at it, and the years that you and I were together on that show, and the kinds of fans that the show generated with the work that we did. You know, it's really a testament, I guess, to you know, just what can be achieved when you have great collaborators and great talent. You surround yourself with great talent. You know.
Yeah.
Not I certainly know that the way to achieve success is to, you know, surround yourself with the most talented people you can find.
Yeah. Is that like, because you and I have talked a few times now about the feeling of like fraudulence in this job, and how often, and I find that often with artists that I talk to in any aspect of the field, that there's always, regardless of whether there's fan art from your show or you have an award behind you or whatever it is, there's, you know, you and I have talked about that in response to doing this and to doing this interview.
Yeah, I think that you know, this is not something. I think it's an interesting question for me, because I certainly, typically this would have been something that I would have run from, and I would never have done this in a million years. I don't know why I'm doing it tonight, because it terrifies me, and it terrifies me from a kind of it like triggers all sorts of like stuff that is, you know, all sorts of stupid insecurities and fears and you name it. And I think, and I have this feeling that, you know, I'm not a teacher. And so when they call this a master class, I think, oh God, like I don't know what, I'm not going to be able to teach anything to anybody.
Right.
And because I feel like I don't know anything. You know, it's funny, because I've often spent a lot of my life living in that sort of insecurity that I'm not smart enough or I'm not good enough, and perpetually felt like a student. And it's only been, I think, maybe in the last, I don't know how long, I've managed to embrace the fact that I'm a student.
Yeah.
That I'm all, and I'll always be a student. That thing of feeling like a student allows me to be present. It allows me to learn. It allows me to ask questions and not feel stupid about it. I don't, you know, as a director, I think we're kind of, you know, taught, or we've come to understand that, like, we need to have all the answers all the time. And that's something that terrified me about the job, because I just felt like I didn't know what the fuck I was doing.
So then how did you, in the beginning of it, step into that position that does have such a expected leadership to it, and a sense of being the one who makes the choices and all of that? Like, I've always been so in awe of directors, because you're able to make decisions on the fly and tell people what to do because you have a certain vision. Like, how do you step into that with that sense of, I don't think I belong here, or whatever that feeling was when you first started?
Well, you know, I'm sure it's different for everybody, and I don't think there's any right way or wrong way to be a director or to be a leader. But for me, you know, I was a very shy kid. I was fucking scared of everything, and had a lot of social anxiety. And but I wanted to create. I was driven to create, and I wanted to make shit with my friends. I wanted to make plays and films and stuff like that. And that was certainly, I kind of think, you know, I was amongst my friends anyway, I was good at bossing people around, but I was also good at like kind of being the glue that kind of kept people together. That was kind of just some little weird superpower of mine. And but I was shy, and I was it was hard to kind of overcome that. And you know, in the early days of you know, having all these grand ambitions of wanting to create, I honestly, I the first time I think I went to set, you know, I was threw up in the morning. I had so many nerves. I've over planned everything. And then as a result wasn't kind of present in my day. I mean, really what I ended up having to do as a young director anyway, was I had to kind of create a persona for myself where I was the director. You know, I would go to set, and you would know, I would go there and I would act for like 12 hours, and I would act like the director, because that guy was decisive and confident, and he wasn't shy, good around people. And this was not at all what I was like in person. So I would go and I would show up and I would act, and it was incredibly exhausting. And
where did you learn that? Where did you learn that that's what a director was?
It was, you mean what a director is supposed to be like?
Yeah, like where did you create, like you obviously must have decided like that those elements were required of this job. Like where did you see that, or where did that first?
Well, I was fascinated with, you know, filmmakers, you know, and I, as a kid, I would watch, you know, I was really interested in, you know, how things were made, and you know, going behind I wanted to see, always wanted to see backstage. You know, it wasn't enough to just appreciate the magic. I needed to know how it was made. And so I was very into following certain filmmakers and watching behind the scenes documentaries as much as I could. You know, I would see, you know, when I was young, I was very impressed and inspired by Steven Spielberg, who, and, you know, for all sorts of reasons, obviously he made a bunch of movies that were really important to me as a young filmmaker, a whole bunch in a row: Jaws, Close Encounters, Raiders. That trifecta was really part of the reason why I wanted to become a filmmaker, but also because, you know, at the time, I don't know, I was in high school, I guess, and he was in his late 20s, and he was incredibly successful. Like he was a young guy. And so he really kind of became this role model for me, and this kind of inspiration for maybe how I would go out there into the world. And I would see him talk in interviews, and I kind of, you know, he kind of became not just him, but a number of other people became this kind of way that a director should be, a way that directors should manage the set, and how he should interact with people, and the confidence that he had in expressing his creative vision, you know. And so that's, you know, I wound up acting rather than directing.
Right.
And you know, like the more you act, you've been on a show long term. We were together on Orphan Black, season 1. You must have been scared shitless doing that, coming to set every day, like, and you don't entirely know what you're doing. You don't know those characters 100%. No. But by the end of season 5, man, you know, you could walk in, you could do that like this, right?
Well, there's a real thing to be said for just hours spent doing it, right? Like the luxury of being the lead on a show is that you get to warm up so much into those characters and live with them over the course of years, you know, episodes or years or whatever.
Yeah.
And actually like sink into them in a really like where you're, you know, you're kind of living and breathing them, as opposed to, I always have this like massive respect for people who come in as day players, as actors for one line or for a day or for a guest part, because it takes so much more bravery for them to come in. They don't know the mechanism of how the rhythm of the set. It's not their second or first home for most of us, you know.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. And I wondered if that is similar in terms of when you come on, if it's not Orphan Black, but it's Man in the High Castle, or it's a show that you haven't established, you're not the father of. Do you have that same sense of like, this isn't my home? And how do you find comfort and be the, this is such a bad word for it. How do you be the daddy?
How do I be the daddy?
Yeah. How do you be the daddy of the set?
I don't know. You know, I still have a lot of nerves over first days and meeting new people, and you know, there's a lot of expectation. You're expected to, you know, be the leader, and I feel like, you know, there's a bunch of responsibility there, but, you know, obvious responsibility of you know, before you show up, understanding the show and understanding your script. I mean, that's kind of really basic stuff, but then showing up with not pretending like I know it all, you know. I think it's really important. I mean, I kind of went through that period of feeling like I was a rock star and allowing my ego to get out of control, and have found that was not a persona that worked well for me. And I find that just showing up and being enthusiastic and energetic, and not being afraid to ask questions and not being afraid to look dumb is and allowing myself to kind of to be out there and to be with the crew, actually, to really kind of, you know, this is, to some degree, it's about probing the various departments and the various crew members to for their opinions and for their ideas. I think that's always part of this. Is very collaborative, obviously, and as a guest director, you need people's help. You really need their help, and so not showing up and with attitude and being arrogant, I think is the big thing. Being kind to people, you know, and recognizing that you need their help and their assistance, you know. I mean, how is it for you? Like I was always so, you know, when day players would come along, you were so giving. Like you were very there. You really set a tone on set that impressed me. You know, like you were a true leader in the sense that that the set, you were, you know, you gave so much of yourself, not just to the other actors, but to the crew and to everyone. You certainly were a big part of what made Orphan Black feel like this incredibly close, loving experience. Like I don't know that I've had that kind of experience on a show before. It wasn't just like that we did good work. It was that every day it was like, I loved being with you guys.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I feel like a lot of us on that show felt very lucky to be doing it. You know, it's not often you get to work on something that feels so different every day, and like you're working in different genres depending on what storyline we're following. You know, we really got to kind of bend genre in it in a way that I've never gotten to do really on any other show. And I also think that you know, in terms of like day players or whatever, I'm just grateful to have a different energy on set. You know what I mean? And to get to work with somebody who I don't know and who is going to do something that I'm not expecting or whatever. You know, so much of what I love about acting and creating is like the thing we're talking about, like the unknown of it, the I don't know. you know, you do all of your work and then you come to set and you're facing somebody who you're like, oh, that's who, you know, that character is. Oh my God. Okay, cool. Like you have to take that in and be present to that, as opposed to any kind of preconceived ideas you had of, and I really think that I definitely started in a much more controlled, analytical, this is what I'm going to do space, out of fear and out of all of that, and just have continued to try to push myself to be like water, you know what I mean? Because I think it's much more fun, as much as it's scarier. I think it's ultimately more fun to be out of control and not know what is going to come at you and not know how you're going to respond to it.
I don't know if, I mean, it's interesting to hear you say fun, to use the word fun, because I don't know that I necessarily understand how that is fun, because but I do understand that when you've you know as a young you know, when I was first starting out, I had said I would over prepare.
Right.
I would over prepare. I would like every little thing was you know, because I didn't want any uncertainty.
Yeah.
And of course, anybody that has directed anything or been on set for 5 seconds knows that, you know, that is a recipe for disaster. You know, what you need, you know, the real thing, because the rug is going to get pulled out on you over and over and over all day long. And inevitably that I was afraid of exactly what you're talking about. That didn't seem fun to me. That seemed like jumping out of a plane without, and not certain whether you had a parachute that was worked or not.
Yeah.
You know, and over the years, I guess I've become, it is like that the work, the process of going to set every day and working is, you know, I will still always plan. I will still always have a very, you know, people make fun of me because I still make a shot list when I go to set. And a lot of people go, wow, no directors do that.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I just do it to organize my brain. And probably it comes from the fear of fucking up, of like showing up and looking dumb.
Yes.
And, but I've become a lot more flexible and a lot more fluid, obviously. And working with you and on this show was a big part of that, was just kind of gaining that confidence where you can go to set and you can have a plan, but you can dump the plan at a moment's notice if someone's got a better idea. And the free fall is actually where some really honest, brave work is created. You know, I really felt like the work, some of the work that you and I did was when it felt like suddenly I didn't have a plan at all. And it was suddenly, it was just you and I in the pressure cooker. And I felt like that's where some of our best stuff came from.
So in those circumstances, when you're on set and somebody comes at you with an idea that you weren't expecting, or something technical is happening that you weren't expecting, or whatever, there's some hiccup, there's something all over the place.
All those things.
Yeah. How do you parse through what is a good idea and what is a safe idea, or what is a comfortable idea, or what is, you know, like I often, if, you know, the relationship between an actor and a director is so collaborative. And sometimes if I get direction, I have to go through my instinctometer and decide whether I'm like responding out of fear, if I'm rejecting the direction, or if I'm not sticking to something I know to be true, if I'm, you know, whatever, like that there's sort of like that gut knowing of what the right move is. Or is there a right move?
I think I love that you have this list. I mean, we certainly had a shorthand in terms of you know, the way we work, the way I would do, the things that I would offer you, and certainly sometimes often that was met with, listen, you're a very like lovely person in terms of a director wanting to, offer something to help the actor. But I get it. Like, sometimes things aren't a good idea. And so knowing kind of when to say no, or embracing when do you embrace the good idea? I think that I spend a lot of time in prep not making decisions on purpose.
I love that.
I spend as much time, like, listen, I will push that right up until as far as I can, until people start getting upset with me.
I love that.
Because what I want to do is I want to like ask questions. I want to get everyone's opinion. I want to hear, almost like I want from every department, I want to hear input, because I thrive off it. I want to talk to my cinematographer. I want to talk to the art department. I want to hear their concerns. I want to hear writer concerns. I want to absorb as much as I possibly can. And I will procrastinate doing any real prep, like anything where I'm like, I have to storyboard or plan anything. I will put that off.
Yeah.
Sometimes probably a little too long.
Mm-hmm.
And with feelings of dread and feelings of like, I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
And just absorb as much as I can. And then kind of that just sort of winds up like, I can wind up exploding creatively, and the decisions can happen really quickly, and the decisions can be really intuitive then.
Mm-hmm.
The more I've absorbed. So I just have to, that's something that I just kind of have to trust is going to be there on the day and in the moment. It's not something that you can really put your finger on. It's something that you just have, you feel your way through it, and you kind of often, decisions like that are you'll hear something that just sounds right, and things will click in your head. And then there's other times where, yes, you do have to make a safe decision based on time. Like you wind up looking at a clock and you're like, I'm in the shit. Yeah. And we all know what that's like. It doesn't matter whether you make a feature film or whether you're on television. You gotta get a day done in a time allowed. And it's not a good feeling to be behind. Mm-hmm. And so often those free fall circumstances where we're taking our plan and tossing it will be dictated by the clock. And so that we can come up with safe decisions, or we can come up with incredibly interesting, creative solutions to solve our time crises. So I think it's a fun place to be in. And I do think that the more under pressure we are and the less planned we are, sometimes the more honest we can become.
How does, because when I think about time on set, I always think of budget. And like how some of the things that I've worked on that had zero budget and no time, somehow the creative alchemy is more alive than when you have myriad amounts of time and so much money or whatever. Do you feel the same way about, or how do you feel, does budget and the constraints of that affect the process by which you approach a job, if in any way?
Well, of course. I mean, I think that, the size of the machine is always going to kind of dictate the pace at which things move. And there's pros and cons to both. I mean, I do think that I've worked on large scale things like, Man in the High Castle, and worked on much smaller budget things. I have to say, I do feel like often, some of my best working experiences do come from the smaller ideas, and often the smaller ideas feel like they wind up very centered in, an emotional landscape of a character and a journey, and they do tend to be more character focused than when you work on a larger scale, when it's like backgrounds of hundreds and techno cranes and 3 cameras and lots of stunts, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff to manage there. And I like working in smaller, more intimate, because I feel like I'm always, when I first read a script, the things that I'm not usually focused on the visual aspects of a script immediately. I think that the things that I get focused on are how it resonates with me emotionally, and characters and voices and character journeys, you know, and then after that, I suppose you start going, wow, this will be really cool because there's I'm doing something big and graphic and visual. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I think the most interesting work that I feel like I've done has been really small, intimate things. I mean, yeah. You know, speaking of which, you know, I was thinking about getting on the phone with you and all of the work that we did. And, you know, lots of things stick out to me in terms of the work, the things that we did. But one of the last things that we did together on Orphan Black was we did this kind of remarkable fucking scene of Helena giving birth to twins.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that was a scene, I mean, and it was a clone scene. So it was Helena and Sarah giving birth to twin babies. And that was something that, you know, I guess I was so caught up in all the technical stuff leading up to that moment that I kind of lost, I didn't realize how emotional that scene was going to be. Mm. And we were kind of making some weird bit of landmark cinema in that moment. I was like, okay, I've seen lots of births on television, yeah, and lots of big emotional birthing scenes, but I've never seen clones do it. And, and it was kind of wild. Like we did a big, you know, we did a big technical, you know, techno dolly shot, which is sort of for those out there who don't know what a techno dolly is, a kind of a computer controlled crane that allows shots to replicate over and over and over again. We did that with little babies
who were just pissing all over me the whole time.
It was
every take I got peed on.
But it's so funny that you know, so that was first of all, that was insane to even undertake.
Yeah.
A big visual effect techno dolly shot with little tiny babies.
Yeah.
But what I didn't realize going into that was just how emotional that scene was going to be, and how it had this weird sort of cathartic moment. I you know, you were crying and I was crying, and it was just like this snot fest of emotion.
Yeah.
And you know, watching that scene back, you know, after putting music to it and cutting it, it's just so raw and so real. And I just wonder, you know, because that's not something that I did. You know, this is really something that you did. And I wonder, you know, I would go, you and I were always talking, and I would always whisper things to you. But how, like, what was your secret? Like, what's the secret, Tat? This is what we all want to know. Like, what?
Well, I got Stephen Lynch to poke my eyes before the take, and bada bing, you got tears.
No, seriously. How do you prepare for this?
Well, for a scene like that, that scene would have been different season 1 than it was season 5 of a show. And that comes from the luxury of having lived with those characters through enough that I felt them living in my body. And I felt Kevin Hanchard as Art living in my body as my deep friend, and Catherine Alexandria, who played, you know, our hero, our clone double, the connection I had to her, all of that, you know, when we talk about like throwing the planning out the window, when you're in a scenario like that where the given circumstances so completely connect to who you are to each other as actors, and to the fact that this was the last, you know, episode of this series that meant so much. You know, there's so much like real life that can just come out in those moments, and I'm always interested in going with what is happening in the moment. So you know, the amount of love I have for Catherine, the amount of love I have for Kevin, the amount of love I have for all the crew, and then, you know, screaming into my pelvis. like there's, you know, certain primal things that are just human, I think. And I think being on set that much, you just remain open to it and allow it, as opposed to, you know, I'd find it way more difficult to be like the X plus the TR, like, you know, do anything technical, techno babble. Like I couldn't do that if you asked me to.
I think though, like I sort of touched on earlier, you know, like often I'll find when I'm, certainly when I'm a guest director or directing on a, you know, someone else's show, that directing actors is a lot more, it's trickier in the sense because they don't know you. And they are, there is a kind of a little fear factor of letting go and showing too much and things getting all ugly and misshapen, you know? So, you know, I often find when I go in and try and poke someone, not you specifically, but I go in and try and poke someone, and I'm trying to kind of elicit a kind of a, I'm needing to, they may be feeling it, but I'm not seeing it.
Yes.
So you know, that's often the thing where I'll go in and I'll kind of poke around at something and ask what they're thinking, what's going on in that moment, and kind of poke at something. And because they don't know me, they get very afraid that they're going to lose control, you know, and so you wind up trying to make a correction and it comes out this big. And then I kind of wind up going back and going, hey, you know, like, is there a way that you can show us more? I want to feel more. I want to enhance that somehow. And there's this fear that things are going to sprout out all over the place. The thing I love about working with you, and I don't know if that's just a part of our relationship or how you are with other directors, so it's something I want to ask you, is that when I go and poke and prod and like make suggestions, you seem very willing, as long as it makes sense in your head, and you know, and often even when it doesn't make sense in your head, you're willing to kind of take a leap of faith and try something that I'm suggesting. And that is, and with a ton of bravery, like without this sort of fear that things can get lumpy or get, like, you know, you push something down here and it pops out over there, you know, and that's something that I think is really exceptional about the way you work, and very specific to the way you work. And I'm wondering, when guest directors come in, how are you with them?
Well, I feel like it's similar to a guest actor. I feel like I want to play first off, and if I get a sense that that person plays too, then I'm like, tell me anything and I'll do it. But if I get a sense that there is ego from a director or rigidity, or, you know, like the same thing that I would be like, oh, this actor really doesn't want to change what they're doing to respond to me, or won't hear me, or listening, you know, a lack of listening, or a really like super misogynist undertone, you know, all those things will be like big red flags for me, and potentially like probably shut me down or make me very resistant to receiving direction. You know, and I'm sure similarly, I don't know if that feels similarly to you when you recognize that an actor is shut down or resistant. How do you give a note? How do you work somebody to allowing you in?
I think that's just kind of part of the job, you know, because you're going to hit all sorts of personalities. You're going to hit all sorts of egos and all sorts of different issues. And it's, you know, it's your job as a director to kind of to bring these things together and to work with them, no matter what kind of personality they are. So I don't know, that's sort of just something, again, that I feel like when I come to my work, I come to my work with enthusiasm and kindness. And I try to be as I don't like that feeling of being the director who knows everything. That is not a role that I'm comfortable with at all. I don't have a problem making decisions and being a kind of a leader, but I don't like this authoritarian kind of position that the director is kind of thought to be. You know, I'm just not good at it. I'm not, like I say, I'm a student. I feel like a student, not a teacher, and that's and so I think if I can approach even someone who's guarded or has a lot of or has ego or has some kind of other hang up. I think if I can approach that with vulnerability and I can share myself openly, and kind of even poke at my own, these are my shortcomings. I think it's kind of that's just sort of always been the way I am, which is I think allows me to relate to people, all sorts of different people.
There's a question here about the work that you've done to remove your ego, to become a better collaborator. And do you feel like there's work that you've done to do that?
Is there work? Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that my part of my theory of how to, my approach to everything is it certainly comes from, I've always had a lot of voices in my head. I've had this like entire committee in my head, and one of those voices is the voice that tells me I'm a rock star. Tells me I should get the best parking. I should be entitled. I'm a fucking genius. And there's that guy. That guy's in my head. Sure. And there's a guy in my head that is just a fuck you to authority. Anyone, you can't tell me what to do. Don't tell me what to do. And then there's the guy that basically criticizes everything that I think and do, and tells me that if I do this, if I show them this, they're gonna hate it, right? And then there's this myriad of like voices, both positive, both shaming and affirming. One of them is a coach who's a little bit more like giving me the pep talk at halftime. And then there's the guy that like keeps me stuck in the past, in the failures of the past, not usually the good things about the past, all the bad things about the past. Sure. And then the other guy who keeps me in the stuck in dreading the future or afraid of the future rather than being hopeful. And all of those voices wind up not making me present and not making me capable of being my most creative self, and accessing whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to call that creativity, that where it comes from. To me, it's like it's like accessing the kid who's sitting at the typewriter typing his sci-fi novel about warriors of Mercury all summer long because I was obsessed with this idea.
What's Warriors of Mercury?
Warrior of Mercury.
What is that?
It's just a thing that I wrote. I'm not a good writer. I write a lot. Yeah. And it's part of, so this whole thing of like, how do you check your ego? Well, I don't know. You just it's important to, I have to calm the voices down in my head. I mean, I think that part of my creative process is like, first of all, having a really good meditation practice. I think it's important to me because I have so many voices in my head, and to be able to access creativity, I think it's important to chill that shit out. I need to be able to control the chatter in my head so that I can go deep, so that I can access that stuff. The other thing is, I think that, I write a lot, and writing is a really sort of key component to doing any work on yourself, I think, and I think that often when I'm stuck, and I'm not just talking creatively, I'm talking about in life, writing has been a way to like sort that out. Writing has been a way to connect to myself.
Hmm.
And then I think that also, you know, it doesn't hurt to have a really good therapist.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Agreed. Very much agreed.
But you know, also this thing of like that director persona, whatever your director persona is, and mine, when it was in its more egotistical or arrogant form, and it was like that for a while. I really thought I was hot shit for a while. It was difficult to check that guy at the door. When the day is done, and we call wrap, hanging that hat up and going home and not being that guy was really, it started to become difficult, and it started to cause problems in my personal life, to be honest, because there are good and bad things about that guy. Right? There's good and bad things, and it became very. Honestly, I felt like I was starting to lose myself in the work, or let's say this: use the work to not look at my true self, to not work on myself. I would use it as a buffer against the world. The fact that I'm a director, I would, and it's been, and it's been interesting during the pandemic.
I was just gonna ask,
you take that away, and what are you left with? You're not working anymore. I'm not working. Well, of course I'm working. I'm always writing and stuff like that, but I'm not on a set. I'm not shooting. And you take that away, and you start to suddenly realize how much of my identity is wrapped up in this job. And as soon as it's not there, I'm like, oh my God, there's all these things that I don't like about myself. So
what advice do you give then to directors? Because, you know, you work perpetually, you work constantly, and you have since I've known you. What advice do you give to directors who aren't working as much, and how do they stay creative how do they stay connected to their art and to their vision or their growth between?
Any artist, any young artist, and not even young artist, I don't know why I'm saying that, but any artist, I really feel like if I'm going to give advice to anyone, it's that you should be writing. I don't know any other way to live this life other than to write my way out of my problems, my personal problems, and connect to myself and to my own creativity. And I think that, like, if you're going to be, if you're going to be holed up at home, I mean, there's lots of things to do, but the main thing is, like, write something. And frankly, I don't know that the pandemic is a reason to not be shooting stuff or to not be creating. I think it's actually a good reason to be creating, to keep us from, to keep the anxiety at bay, you know? Because I mean, we're all in the same boat right now. There's so much uncertainty, and we're all in an industry that is very fickle and is very job to job to job, and is based on kind of reputation. And so it's I think now is the time. I mean, honestly, I really feel like the pandemic in some ways has made me more creative and made me more inspired and made me want to write more than ever. So in some ways, it's been really good for my creative life, for sure.
There's an interesting question here. You sort of mentioned a little bit, you said living in the past, the failures, which I relate to. This person is asking, how do we deal with mistakes that we realize that we've made? Like, how can we learn from it without letting fear of making mistakes stop us from being creative and trying new things? I think that's a nice question.
That is a nice question. That is a really good question, because often when you fuck up, like, when was the last time, do you here's a little, have you been gone on stage and forgotten a bunch of your lines and really effed something up and forgot a bunch of cues?
Oh yeah.
So how did you leave stage? Like, have you been truly mortified in front of a live audience?
Have I been truly mortified?
Yeah, because you fucked
every
up.
day of my life. Yes, absolutely. The first preview we did of Network, I went out on stage. I'm playing like Diana Christensen, you know, the sexiest villain in history of cinema.
Nice.
Whoops. And I go out on stage. Dustin Hoffman is second row, like
Oh.
right there.
Oh,
And my
shit.
first line, I go up and I'm like, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what the line was, like, hey, Max, how's it going, or whatever. Not the line. But I'm like, hey, Max, how's it going? And I stuttered so much that and this happens now, I'm even turning beet red now, but I turned beet red. Like, and I'm like, well, I've lost them. And I still remember that 1 second on stage that meant nothing to anybody else on the planet, but is like the thing that I'll, like, you know, lambaste myself over in dark moments.
So what did you do? What did you do, like, after that performance? So you leave stage and what did you do? Like, how do you rise above a moment like that?
Well, for me, like, all that entire process, because I also read the reviews and got lambasted in the reviews and got called a dorky kid and got, you know, all of this.
You are a bit dorky, actually.
But I didn't want them to tell me that.
No, of course not.
You know,
wants to hear
whatever. Nobody wants to hear exactly who they are when they're trying to be the opposite.
Right.
So I had to go out on stage every night. Basically, I had to stand in all of the embarrassment of it, keep going out there, and find something that was more interesting than my self-flagellation. So continue to push forward and ask questions about who this character was, and continue to find ways to be present by investigating this, or, you know, it for me, it really is about, like, not sinking into the feeling of humiliation, but finding things that are more interesting, finding, you know, curiosities that are more fulfilling and more energizing than that very, very easy to fall into despair at, you know, whatever.
I think a lot of you know, artists and young people you know, coming into this job and into these professions are you know, have a kind of have that voice that is telling them that they're not going to succeed. This is just some kind of crazy dream, you know, whether that's their parents telling them that they can't succeed in this job, like they should do something more practical. It doesn't seem like it seems like a dream. It doesn't seem real. It's easy for us to have these, like, little failures and then back away in fear. And I think that what we should be doing I think that even as part of a meditation practice, we should be cultivating these concepts of belief. Like, I don't know if you have a meditation practice or not, but I'm not talking about mindfulness. I'm talking about a visualization practice, you know, where you are contemplating a kind of a theme or an idea, and then seeing that through, and seeing and fulfilling that in your mind, to your own successful advantage. I often feel like the failures hurt. You know, when you get shitty notes from someone and they tell you that, you know, what you just did sucks, and we've all had that. I mean, it takes a lot to absorb that, and at first it's very personal. Yeah. It's really, really personal. But it's this place of being able to kind of stand in there, not become defensive. You know, maybe explain what your original motivation was, even if it didn't succeed, and then go away, find your friend, cry on their shoulder, drink, whatever you got to do, and digest this, and transform this energy. Like, you need to bring real energy to transforming that. You know, and the more you kind of, like, sit there in that resentment and work through the resentment, you can often find that thing where you can go, you can take it as a way to turn it into a positive, and make that become something that, you know, makes you better, makes your performance better, makes the next thing better. You know, like in football, they say, you know, he's got a chip on his shoulder. You know, you want to tell me that I suck? Okay, fuck you. I'll show you the next time I come out. The next time I come out, I'll do it fucking way better.
Yes.
You know, and that is something I can either go hide in my bed with a bag of cookies and ignore the phone, or I can rise up and really take it to heart and try and be better the next time. Like and that's a way, just a nice way to kind of live life too. I think that not allowing people to beat you down and rise above adversity is a big part of, I don't know, just being a human being on the planet, I think, you know.
How do you, this is a question from Ayana Harvey, who's who's asking, how do you create an environment on set where the crew and the cast feel safe to take chances, make mistakes, and fail? And she puts fail in quotes, and which I think is actually a really great point, you know, because like, what is failure? But how do you create that?
Well, first of all, hi, I think that, well, I guess it depends on whether I've you know, one of the things that I feel most proud about Orphan Black was the fact that I was pretty responsible for putting that group of people together. So, you know, I picked the crew. I basically wanted to put a little landscape of people together that I felt that I could relate to, and that I could be comfortable working safely. You know, that I wasn't going to surround myself with a bunch of egos. I was going to surround myself with people like me that were like open and kind of like raw and kind of like we're talented, but we're but we're like we're enthusiastic and really giving and really loving and kind and kind of nerdy, which I tend to like. In situations where I haven't put that crew together, I just have to show up and I have to be responsible for the tone on set as much as I can be. I have to show up and I have to be me. You know, and as much as I've said I've created a kind of director persona, that director persona is someone that is, you know, it's certainly come back to being me and trying to be grounded and trying to be real and trying to be open, as open as possible, and being as kind as possible. You know, and being as compassionate as possible. I think that a big part of this, the job of a director, is kind of a sort of a wise compassion for the people, and certainly for the actors, because the actors are, like, as a director, there is, you know, there's 100 different people to manage there's so much technical stuff going on all the time, and I think that it's sort of understood that you are going to know it all. You're going to know it all. You're going to know lenses and cameras and technical crap and technical mumbo jumbo and all this stuff. But it's not true, really. I mean, in the end, there's so many other people that can look after that stuff. But it is only the job of the director to keep the story and the script front and center, and to communicate with the actors. And because I'm the only one the actors have, you know, and so that relationship, it's really important that the actors feel safe in that relationship and feel like they're in a place where they can explore with me, and they can, you know, we can go off to the side and frickin' have a cry fest and then come back and do the work. We can go, you know, and you know, but it's because we felt safe together, you know, and I try to bring that to all of the actors that I work with. I try and be as much me and be as vulnerable as I can be, and listen as much as possible. I mean, that's part of the job, as far as I'm concerned.
David Massar is asking about production rehearsals, which sort of ties into this idea. But what's the ideal amount of rehearsal before you go to camera?
Well, rehearsal, I think rehearsal for me is more important to use rehearsal time. I don't know what the ideal amount is. So It's nice to have rehearsal time. I know you don't always get it. I think that I think that I don't like to over rehearse things. In fact, I tend to think that my best use of rehearsal time is really to just talk about stuff. Talk about the scenes. Talk about the scene mechanics. Talk about the character. Talk about where the characters has come from. We'll talk about the tone within the scene. I mean, don't you think that is sort of the best use of making sure that you and I are on the same page?
Yeah.
Not getting up and staging stuff. Sometimes that's necessary. Obviously, we had a lot of technical stuff to do. So it was really important that because we were doing clone scenes together, where there's 2 or 3 different characters, all played by you in the same shot, that became necessary to do multiple, like really figure that stuff out very carefully. But when it's not that, I mean, what's the best use of rehearsal time for you?
Well, I'm thinking of actually the first time that you and I met, which was in a rehearsal.
Really?
When you were producing Ginger Snaps Unleashed, the sequel to Ginger Snaps.
Oh, you were so young and cute.
I was 17 years old. I looked 6, but it was like my first feature film, definitely, like my first lead or supporting lead. And it was a real character. Ghost was this bleach blonde serial killer, which is your favorite thing to make me do. be bleach blonde and kill people.
Play twitchy weird characters.
Twitchy weird characters, but you weren't directing, you were producing that one.
Yes.
And one of the first, I think, other than the audition, one of the first things that you and I did was work through a couple scenes together to discover behavior and to find ghosts. What's that?
And cadence.
Which was like eye-opening to me. Obviously, being a kid, those things are like innate when you're playing make-believe with your friends, but then when you're in front of a camera, it's like, I don't get to do that stuff. But then you really encouraged like all of these sort of tics and this sort of behavior of this character, her nerves, how they sort of manifested, and her pattern of speech and all of that. And that rehearsal was really formative in terms of creating this character. And we had the luxury of, I don't even know how long, maybe an hour of doing that to sort of, and that was a very unique process for me.
That's,
sure.
I think I think it's lovely that you mentioned that. That was certainly our first encounters with each other, and I think that for me, sometimes, talking through stuff like that or giving notes, I find I can often be, I can often have a difficult time sort of articulating words when giving notes. Like I'll feel something, or I'll have a sense of things, and then trying to find a way to communicate it is can sometimes be challenging for me, honestly, to find and sometimes it's like I literally have to go in and have a kind of back and forth conversation and even act it out a little bit and talk about it in a kind of way where we are just having a conversation. It's really, I think, even as I recall, even when we're talking about that situation, it's really even important that I don't want to be thought of as the director. I just want to be like, I kind of just want to be a friend. I just want to have a conversation like a friend, and you're really good at like taking inarticulate direction and somehow transforming it into something real.
Well, I think on both sides of things, there's like an element of translation that goes along with being in the director-actor collaboration. Like, because you are having to take kind of instinctive notes and sort of process them on both sides. You know, when you watch the monitor, you're receiving what I'm giving, and you're processing it and seeing what rings true and what feels false and whatever, or where we could explore. I remember you seeing impulses that I wasn't doing, but you could see that I wanted to do them. And you would encourage me then on the next take to do it, translating my, you know, whatever. And similarly, you say something to me and it goes through my process and I translate it into whatever terms, you know, physically make sense to me. Or
I mean, it really is a true gift, Tatiana, because you were able to create these such diverse characters and keep them grounded and keep them real. I mean, it really, you know, from an early age, you know, from back when I met you when you were 17, this was an incredibly weird character. This character was nothing like you. It is so completely different from you, and yet you took all this kind of quirky, twitchy, fast-talking, serial killy dialogue and made it, and somehow it came out as a real person. It really, and so that's something that is really kind of remarkable. I think that you know, when you are prepping, like like what is the secret? Like really, like how do you do this? How did you do it?
I think
it's a kind of what's the Maslany secret sauce?
No idea. It's different every time. You know, I'm sure you feel the same way when you approach a project. Like you were saying earlier about like not making choices early on. I think I used to do that. I used to make choices because I was so heady and so scared of looking foolish or whatever. Now I'm like phobic of choices. Like I hate making choices. I'd rather sit in the soup for the rest of my life than make any decisions about anything. But it's really, it depends. It depends what like the piece is calling for. Some pieces require like a lot of research, and some require a lot of dance, and some require a lot of introspection, and some require like journaling and diaries, and you know, like
what's your favorite of those things?
I like a mishmash of all of it.
Do you?
I love the physical thing first. I love being physical. I love dancing to connect to a character or to find behavior or whatever. Like that was a big one for Orphan Black, but yeah, it's different depending.
So okay, let's. Can I ask you? I know this is.
You can't ask me a single question.
No, I want to ask you another question. Okay. So
okay, well, I'm not listening.
So you are. So can I? So specifically, can we just stay with this for a second? Your in terms of creating character and then interfacing with the director in the creation of that character. Let's steer it away from Orphan Black for a second and talk about Perry Mason, because this is a show that everyone's seeing right now. You're got this wonderful, kooky, crazy character that you play. I love this character. How was that? How did you become that character, and how did you work with Tim, the director on
Tim
that?
Van Patten. Yeah. Well, early days, it was a lot of conversations, just sort of ideas, just sort of floating ideas back and forth that the two of us had, and that the writers had about her. And then the reference point for her was this preacher who existed at the time in the 1930s. So kind of watching little videos of her, listening to her voice, reading her sermons, sort of like trying to understand her a bit.
So there was actually a real character reference that you were.
There's like a pretty clear reference, and she like her church is like 2 blocks from where I live. Like she.
Wow, okay, that's
so
cool.
She's around. Yeah. Her name is Sister Amy Semple McPherson. So, and she was from like small town Canada. So there was a lot of like echoes. Yeah, just like you. So there was a lot of that, and then it was listening to music from that time, but then it was also and working on voice, trying to find a voice that felt kind of super Canadian, also like performative and different than my own.
Did you work with a dialect coach on this?
I didn't. No. Just dug back into the archives. And then it, again, it's like kind of coming to set in the costume, all of that, seeing myself in the mirror, but then sitting opposite Matthew Rhys or, you know, anybody who's on set, and the way they're speaking to me or the chemistry between us is telling me so much about who she is just by the absorption of that contact. And the director, Tim Van Patten, giving me tiny little, like, I wonder about this. Like, just wondering. You would just wonder about stuff. And I'd be like, yeah, me too, I wonder that. And then I'd wonder on the next take about that, and that would take me somewhere different, you know, or whatever. Like, just, yeah, it's just sort of, I don't know.
So I like that as a kind of, you know, I wonder.
I wonder about, it's
we're
interesting.
in this, and it's nice that using those words, I wonder, it really puts us on this journey together.
Yes.
It puts us together.
Yes.
Because we're working together in this moment. And I'm wondering,
Yeah.
I think, you know, really kind of makes us feel cohesive. I mean,
Yeah.
I can imagine that doing that show required nerves of steel, much like going out on the stage on Broadway to, you know, it really requires some real nerves. You know, it's interesting because I remember you, when you showed up at the your network callback for Orphan Black, and this was an extremely important audition. This was like, you know, you fuck it up and you're out, you know.
Yeah.
And you showed up on rollerblades, all sweaty, like not at all like I've never seen anybody do that before.
Right.
So, like, why did you do that? It feels like these things are all part of the same, it's part of your process.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, for me, that experience was so scary to be going into this thing that I love. Like, I was so in love with that part with Orphan Black. And I wanted it so bad. But I also had a massive I had a sense, like you were saying, of like, I'm a rock star and I deserve this, but also a sense of you're a fraud and how dare you think you can be like the cool lead of a TV show? Like, you're not made for this. You don't look like this. You don't, whatever. So for me, getting on rollerblades was one, a way to be breathing when I arrived so that I was present. And you and I have talked about that a lot, about presence.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that I'm in my body and I'm breathing. And then to arrive sweaty, similarly to you with the like, fuck you, fuck your rules, was to arrive like as me. So not like pristine out of a cab, you know, I'm camera ready, but like I'm in my body, I'm kind of sweaty, like take me or leave me. Do you know what I mean? Like either you like me or you don't, and if you don't, then that's fine. But it's connected to fear, it's connected to fraudulence, and it's also at the same time connected to this is who I am as an artist. So it's like this strange collision of all those things.
Well, it's very disarming because you're suddenly faced with someone who is really, really real. Often, you know, we just meet people's personas, and and certainly with actors, there is this kind of thing, this rigidity that they have to present themselves as perfect. And I think that's it's a nice way to kind of, I maybe I should start rollerblading to work. You know, on my first day at set when I've got all these nerves. Maybe I should try it.
Or you just wave the flag of dorkiness. Just be like, this is who I am. Like, I'm not going to pretend to be a cool guy. This is a question kind of connected to this.
Okay.
How do you deal with someone else's ego on set, especially from stars that carry the project? Feel free to use examples of anyone who might be in the room.
I'm not, right. Are you talking about you?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, like, yeah. Have you worked with somebody who has?
I'm not going to use like examples, but
please throw me under the bus.
No, I think of course you wind up with having to manage all sorts of types. I mean, that's like I say, that is how do I manage that? you just kind of just keep showing up. Keep,
Mhm.
you know, like often when, you know, because I've had little snippy comments towards me, little like, like that make you kind of feel shitty from
Mhm.
actors. I've
Mhm.
had it, like where they're like, back off, I know what I'm doing, you know? And I feel like I can take that back to the monitor, and I can make that personal, and I can turn that into a resentment and go, fuck you, I won't actually give you anything then. Or I can calm the fuck down,
Yes.
take a moment, and listen to the performance. Not look at my watch, listen to the performance. And, you know, and I get people like, hey, I don't need direction from you. I really just want to just leave me alone. Let me do a few takes by myself without any, I have to find, it's always about kind of like finding the way to like the way in with everyone's different, right?
Yeah.
And there's always a way in with everybody.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like part of the fun of doing this job is figuring out the little combo lock that allows you in and allows someone to trust you. You know, often I remember going out on shows with actors that absolutely are very much you know, well-known actors who don't trust you to begin with, and you have to earn their trust. You really do. And the way you earn their trust is you keep listening, and you keep showing up, and like, you know, if they want to talk about it, then I'm there to talk about it. I can make, and you start just doing little things, you know, and being kind, and listening, and making them feel like you really give a shit,
Yes.
that they're the most important person on set.
Uh-huh.
But you do that with everybody. I'm not saying
Yes.
I'm not like, you know, I need to give the attention here, and I need to give attention there.
Yeah.
You know, you've got a bunch of kids, and you can't you can't buy a gift for one kid and then not have the other kid get upset about that, right?
Is it harder to direct someone that gives you too much or someone that doesn't give you anything?
Way harder to give you. You can't get something from nothing.
Uh-huh.
I would rather have way too much. Like that's far easier to work with than someone that just is wouldn't or won't give, or is so guarded that they won't give it to you. You know, or has fear. Like if I'm trying to push into an emotional area and they have fear about going there, and some people do, because either they think that they're frightened that they'll dry. They won't be able to. They might go there for one. They might be able to go there emotionally for one take or maybe two, and then that'll be it. And the scene will be fucked because they're trying to shoot a bunch of things. I shoot. You know, I like to shoot as much as I can. I like to explore as much as possible. And you know, for whatever reason, they can be fearful. You know, so that's part of like understanding, being as compassionate and as understanding towards them as possible. So
in response to that, Vanessa Shaw has said, thank you both for using the word kindness so strongly. It's been a long time coming to have this on sets. And I think that's very true.
It is imperative. It is kind of it's an important mantra that I like to live by. I don't think that this, you know, there's so much you know, there's so much awful shit going on in the world, and people mistreating others, that there's, you know, as far as I'm concerned, there's no room for that on any set that I'm part of. So, you know, I don't know. To me, this is, you know, being kind, I think, is a big part of like me knowing myself and understanding myself, and then being able to, because I understand myself, I can have compassion and understanding for other people. You know, and we're specifically having conversations about actors and directors, but that certainly goes out to everybody. That goes out to the rest of the crew, and certainly out into the world.
Well, so Ayana Harvey has also asked about the iconic moments in Orphan Black. She says, I know from a reliable source that you were the creative mind behind some of these scenes. How do you work with writers to weave these beats into the larger narrative?
Iconic scenes, like when you think iconic scene, what do you think? What do you think of? I don't know if
Ayana, give us some iconic.
I
would like the tail, the dance sequence.
I think I don't know whose idea was this.
Yeah, but you notoriously have weird ideas.
The Scorpion was definitely me, for sure.
She says the clone heavy finale scenes.
Yeah. Well, that was always, and what was the question again?
Well, how do you weave those beats into the larger? So I'm guessing when you have like an idea for, I remember you saying like, you know, the craft room for Allison was a lot of what brought you to making Orphan, was like kind of integral to creating Orphan Black, like these weird little, you know, images or ideas that you have that become part of, you know, become the world.
A lot of my thinking around Orphan Black was never really about the things that I really liked about Orphan Black were always the kind of the stuff that was really silly. You know, it wasn't always about the conspiracy. It was always about certain silly scenarios. You know, when you talk about the craft room, and really that was, you know, that was my sister. It was my sister and her craft room, and my sister kind of was a little template for Allison. But I think through the course of the series, I think part of the fun of that show is like finding what the next really mind-blowing visual thing that we can do with the clones is, but always trying to come at a place of from a place of narrative and character. Like it's not cool to me to force something in there that doesn't belong, or force a style on a show that it doesn't want. It's not asking for. I really truly believe that the characters and the story and that's what dictates style. So it has to be there for a function. It has to truly be a part of the fabric of the story and tell story. First and foremost, if it's not telling story, it doesn't belong. So when I think of, like, you know, some of the big clone scenes that we did, the dance scene, I don't know how necessary it was. I think it was maybe just a part of a cool idea, but at that point in the show, it was a kind of a pressure release moment. It was like all of the girls together. This was a real moment of sisterhood. Mm-hmm. If anything, it was really to express our differences and unite in our differences. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Deeply thematically linked to the entire point of the show.
Yeah, I mean, uniting in our differences is what makes us stronger. Mm-hmm. And seeing those girls dancing together was, you know, there was no dialogue in the scene. It was just a kind of a fun scene to do. But really, that's what it was. It was showing, and each girl is dancing with their own unique style. Mm-hmm. in this kind of like beautiful sort of, you know, interweaving, safe place, and being okay with each other, and Helena's, you know, been crazy for the vast majority of the show, and we've all had our differences, but somehow in that moment we are gelled and complete, so it tells story. Yeah. But at the same time, from a visual point of view and from a technical point of view, it raises the bar.
So were there things that you guys had to cut that were cool visual ideas, or do you have to kill ideas sometimes when they don't?
Yeah, sometimes, you know, ideas are too big for our britches. Sometimes we're trying to force a round peg in a square hole. Sometimes it's a cool idea, but it's not fulfilling story purpose. But inevitably, the important thing on the show, and you know this, is that as we got more, you know, we all gained confidence. We started to get kind of cocky, and we started to like go, we got to, you know, this isn't good enough. It has to be better. It's got to be better the next time. It's got to be bigger. Like, how do we bump the bar higher and higher? you know, it, and listen, that created a lot of anxiety and stress for both you and I, because it was like you and I together in the pressure cooker with all of those expectations that everybody had. And we were able to somehow create a little vacuum around us and kind of do this work and do it kind of go, okay, I know what all the expectations are. There's a lot of voices out there, and we could just kind of like insulate ourselves in this little place and be together and do the work. And I don't know how well I answered that question. I think I wound up rambling there, but
No, I thought that was great. How do you take notes from the network while maintaining your voice and all the weird shit you want to do and pushing them maybe out of their comfort zone? Or
Well, you know, I talked about notes, getting notes earlier, and getting notes when they're good notes. It's great. Oh, everyone's great. This is a great show. We're making a great show. And then, you know, getting the notes that you don't want to hear. That is just that's a practice in not taking shit personally, you know, and being able to kind of walk away from it and transform it, right? On Orphan Black specifically, I mean, we were a little bit more tactful. I mean, really, this was a kind of a very unique experience to be in charge of a show and have so much creative freedom. And I don't expect that that's something that I may ever have again in my life. But Graham and I, because of the fact that we had two networks, we had a Canadian network and we had an American network. So we had CTV, Space, and we had BBC America in the United States. We had the two networks. Often there was sometimes a way to maneuver notes politically by playing one off the other and nullifying them to get what we wanted. I know that sounds kind of manipulative and not really super honest, but in the end, I mean, really, you do what you do. Like if notes come in and they work and they're interesting and they're valuable, even if they're harsh, great, use them. But you know as well as I do that you can get dumb notes as well. You can get notes that aren't so good, you know, and don't really. And you have to kind of like, how do you play? How do you do it? How do you do when you get a note that you go, okay, that person doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. When you get a note like that, how do you play that?
It really depends where I'm at. Sometimes I'm really resistant.
What time it is?
Yeah, if I'm hungry. It depends. Sometimes I'll get defensive. Sometimes I'll get shut down. And then sometimes I'm able to go like, okay, I can see what you're trying to communicate. And I can, like I was saying, like translate that into something that makes sense. But
how do you avoid getting defensive?
It's really hard. It's really hard because I think starting as a kid, because I started acting when I was a kid, notes felt like a judgment. Notes felt like something I was doing wrong.
Yeah,
and so,
very shaming. Shame.
Like I saw you do something wrong, and so you have to do better next time. Whatever.
So this is all linked. This is all linked to childhood, isn't it?
Totally.
Like so it taps right into these primal feelings that we have about ourselves, or certainly I relate to that 100%.
And I think like, you know, if you were a kid and you were playing with your friends and your friend was like, no, you're not a giraffe, actually, you're a dinosaur. And you'd be like, yeah, totally, I am. Like, you would just do it. But as soon as there's like money and public and it's your career and blah, 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 like it's ego.
The stakes are high.
Totally. And ego comes into it. So I think it depends, but I try to be as open as I can. And I try to see it as a suggestion and something that will allow me to move differently and shift. And
I think that that's something that, you know, I've certainly been extremely defensive in the past and felt like I've had my back, that I was being attacked And as soon as you react like that, I mean, you know, that the other person is probably there because they don't want to hurt you. They don't want to rip you down. They want to make the best show they can. They're actually coming at, and I'm reacting to it with my ego, and suddenly it's all about me. It becomes an attack, and then I'm projecting that on that person, and that's that's not a good place to be. Boy.
It's not creative, that's for sure.
No, and so that's the goal. Is like, let's you know, how do I be present enough and aware of myself enough that I can not go to that place. I can not go to the child shaming place, and I cannot go to the place where I feel like I'm being attacked. And I don't know. Therapy.
Therapy, everybody.
Lots of therapy.
Do you have any tips for pitching?
Pitching.
Yeah.
Oh God, I'm terrible pitching. This is the same. I don't like pitching as much as I don't want to do what we're doing right now.
You don't? You seem fine with this.
I don't know. That's because I can't see everybody, honestly.
Right.
If there's been a big audience, I would probably have left long ago. But pitching. Boy, I don't, you know, pitching is the pitching is like auditioning, right? It really is. And so you're either good at auditioning or you're not good at auditioning. You know, I think there's some actors that are really good at auditioning and then get to set and kind of aren't as good as they were in their audition. And then some actors that are kind of, you know, shitty audition, and the casting director goes, yeah, they're not a good audition. And you just go look at some of the stuff that they've done, and then they're really, really talented on, you know. So I feel that I guess, you know, cooking is about preparation. It's all about preparation, being as ready and understand the material as much as you can be. And then often for me, what I will do is I will write my pitch. I will write it. So I'll write it all literally and write it the way I would say it, like a script. So I want, not in any sort of formal way. It's like the way it would sound good coming out of my mouth in a room. And I will write the whole thing like a script, and say it a bunch of times, time it, say it, and then just toss it. And not in an attempt to memorize it all.
Yes.
Like just really, you know, sometimes in a pitch, I'll come with a little computer and have some bullet points so I don't lose track of where I'm going, and just be as say a prayer, be as grounded as I can, and try to remember that I don't want to present myself as the serious artist. I want to bring a sense of humor to my work. I want to bring a sense of humor to the room. I want to present myself as a kind of just be as real as I can, I guess. You know, that's the way, but be as prepared as possible.
I have one last question.
Yeah, great.
It is, why is storytelling important to you and in general? Why is it important?
Why is storytelling important to me? Well, you know, I have a personal connection to that, I guess. For me, you know, the way this kind of all happened for me, I guess everyone has their own kind of story, or their own, you know, everyone has their origin story. Mine was that when I was very young, there was a family tragedy. My older sister was killed in a car accident. And I was 4, I was about 4 at the time, and she was 17. And you can imagine that what the house was probably like after that. I don't really have any memories of that time period. I think I blocked it all. But what I was left with was this impression, not just an impression. My parents, that house was just filled with like anger and blame and overwhelming grief and sadness, and nobody had time for me. I mean, my 17-year-old sister was kind of a caregiver for me. And so she was gone. No one was really explaining to me what happened. I was very confused. And so I spent a lot of time alone. And to block out and to deal, because I didn't know how to deal with it, and my parents were obviously very preoccupied with their own trauma, I would go off and I would play and I would create these very vivid imaginary worlds and talk to myself and tell stories and really create a very kind of like intricate, layered, very, very visual, real play. And that would always be the way I dealt with all of the trauma that was going on outside. So I would, and that's just what I did. I was by myself a lot, I would go down in the basement or into my room, and these stories would be the way I protected myself. And so they were really, it was how I survived my childhood, was telling stories and creating characters and voices. And to this day, I talk to myself endlessly. Like, I'm here, pandemic. Of course, I've got a cat, so I have someone sometimes I can direct.
Someone's hearing you, yeah.
But I'm talking all the time. I'm talking to myself all the time, and having conversations. And my kids think I'm insane mostly, but it comes from that. It comes from this. It came from it. It was generated out of trauma. And having to deal with trauma, and became a, out of my sister's death came this superpower of an ability to use stories as a way to heal.
That's amazing.
So that's my story.
Thank you for sharing it.
I love
you for doing this. I love you too, and I know that you didn't want to do it, but you did it, and you nailed it. You killed it. It was great.
So did you. So did you. I hope certainly to the membership out there and the people watching that there was something, that there was a takeaway here somewhere. It's been my hope that we could somehow inspire and just entertain, to some degree tonight. I certainly don't feel like I have all the answers, and I'm grateful to be a perpetual student of this craft, and this is part of my learning.
Well, I mean, John, Tatiana, honestly, that was, and I think I speak for everybody watching, that was so genuine and open and honest and giving from both of you. Really, one of the most remarkable conversations that I've witnessed about the creative process, and particularly about the process between an actor and a director. So thank you so much. I thought that was just kind of spectacular. Thanks. So going from a place of hesitancy in doing this to giving that much to this masterclass, I really, and I'm sure I speak for everybody, I really appreciate it.
Well, really. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's been, and Tad, I'm really grateful that you, when I said, can you please help me out? Help me to not fail here. That you stepped up to that. And
that was so fun.
I just appreciate all the time that I get with you. And I love what you've been doing, Hans. There's so many talented people in this, in the guild and in the membership here, and I love hearing everyone's voices. Like, this has just been such a inspirational series, and so many people that I listen to, so many directors here that are so articulate, and so it really blows my mind. It certainly makes me want to become better at my job.
Well, it's an absolute honor to have you guys part of the series. Really, absolutely fantastic.
Are you there? What is that?
That's my pandemic partner.
Oh,
that's Wolfgang. Just in case you're wondering.
She's like, who are you talking to if it's not me?
It's my cat. It's just decided to show up here. Yeah.
And we could go on. We could. I'm sure. I mean, I wanted to go on for another hour or two, but we had to bring it to a
No.
close.
It's
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
time to kind of
To those watching,
all.
join us. Join us next Wednesday for our final regularly scheduled DGC Masterclass with two-time Emmy-winning director and producer of incredible shows such as Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, The Walking Dead, Westworld, and more recently The Deuce, Better Call Saul, and The Morning Show, Michelle McLaren, in
Woohoo.
conversation with renowned director and producer as well as current DGC president, i.e. my boss, Tim Southam. It continues to be an amazing ride, and I certainly hope it is, as John was suggesting, providing some relief and entertainment, and speaking for myself, if not everybody else, incredible inspiration tonight during these very, very challenging times. So be safe, be well, have a great night. John, Tatiana, thank you so very, very much for spending this time with us. Really appreciate it.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thanks
Yes.
so much.
All right.
See
Bye-bye.
you guys.
Good
Bye.
night.